we are at the point where we are establishing topsoil skirts. And your root collar excavation and your aeration and decompaction have put you in a position to now begin to incorporate soil material and place it in specially prepared areas located next to the fibrous roots of a tree. And we're going to do this using three simple methods. You're going to acquire topsoil in bulk. You're going to haul it in 22 yards at a time, dump it, and spread it. You're going to purchase it by the bag and inoculate trenches and cover the critical root zones, and you're going to form topsoil on site, and that involves incorporation and the formation of soil with the addition of certain amendments that accelerate this process, as we've talked about. And forming topsoil skirts is absolutely essential to the health, long-term health of the trees, and is a cornerstone of the Cheap to Keep Trees and Landscapes protocol, because you feed the landscape by feeding the soil, and we are going to show you the methods that you use to do that in the typical urban soils environment. In the formation of your or establishing of your topsoil skirts, you've got bulk purchase where you're able to acquire from your local area sometimes completely composted organic materials that can be hauled in, and you pay for them by the yard. You have them delivered and dumped on site, and have your personnel wheelbarrow them individually into the critical root zones of the trees. You don't want to use heavy mechanical machines, because it defeats the purpose of the decompaction that we're accomplishing in the critical root zones to allow water in. And so secondly, you can, in addition to bulk purchase, you can buy it by the bag. And when you buy it by the bag, that is limited by the Fifth Element's design intent and the amount of money they have to spend on that particular resource. And it's a relatively simple process to determine how much you want, how much you have to spend. Where you're going to be challenged using the Cheap to Keep Trees and Landscape protocol is formation of topsoil on site by recycling native materials and forming this topsoil free at no cost, making it a cheap to keep contributor to the overall health and welfare of the ownership's landscape. When you come into a customer's designed ecosystem, especially if it's the first time you visit it, and in the natural areas, you're going to see layers. The first layer is a mulch layer, many times, that has been placed there again and again and again, year after year, almost like a ritual, what we refer to as a bad cultural practice. And this mulch is simply organic material. It is not topsoil, it is not even dirt, it is just organic material. And we're drawing your attention to it now because ANSI specifies 2 to 4 inches, and the reason 2 to 4 inches is specified is if you go deeper than that, and very frequently you're going to find mulch beds as deep as 8 to 10 inches, it cuts off the oxygen and exchange of water between the lower layers of rotting organic material that are in fact forming topsoil. And if you're not careful, then this overlying layer of organic material, some of it might even be fraught with diseased, dead trees and other materials, then you are in fact hurting the process of soil formation, and that is not what you want to do. Incorporation is the solution, and the material has already been acquired. It's there on site. It's up to you to incorporate it and start the topsoil formation process. Topsoil is extremely key to the long-term health and especially to the amount of money it takes to maintain a tree and landscape for a residential home or a commercial site. And the reason it's so important is because there are a number of active processes taking place in topsoil that provide nutrients for the tree. Fertility is measured by the availability of 16 essential elements required for structure and referred to as mineral elements because they are acquired from the soil. The 3 elements that are found in greatest concentration in plant tissues are obtained from water and air, and these are hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen. And with adequate sunlight and water, every compound that a plant needs to live and grow can be made from these 19 elements. Now, the active processes that I'm talking about are called decomposition. Composting is the common overall term that we refer to, and that is what we promote in establishing topsoil skirts. And when we stir, when we aerate and decompact, and when we amend these topsoil skirts with the either bulk purchased or bag purchased or locally recycled organic materials such as grass clippings, leaves, or locally acquired materials that can be shredded, rotted, and placed in the critical root zone, there is the process of fermentation and humification under the general category of composting that takes place. These will rot these materials down, and the trees will be getting what they need from the soil through these active processes. And you'll hear me refer to an active absorption process, but it's really not absorbing. What trees do is modify the soil and take what they need with the help from other organisms. And I'll describe more about that as we go through our topsoil sequence. All right, as you can see, this is where the internal symplast of the tree, the internal circulatory system of the tree, joins with the external fungal and bacterial system of the soil, and they unite in a very unique way using these little thread-like substances you see here. You see how they inhabit the main roots of the tree right here, and this is where cheap to keep comes to fruition. See that right there? That union of the external and the internal is what makes this tree manufacture its own nutrients without us having to do anything, which is the definition of cheap to keep. A tree that can maintain its own efficiency and growth and maintenance practices within a designed ecosystem of balance. All we have to do is provide the water, and as you can see as I pull this apart, it comes out in a very complex system where all of this is inhabited with living organisms. Here's the main parts of the root. Here's some of the hyphae, the thread-like substances that join the external to the internal. And this is how the tree acquires its nutrients from substances that are formed in the soil. Here's another one right here that's a great example. Look at that. See that? And this is where the bullet hits the bone, operators. If you get this, you won't have to do anything but incorporate and mulch and water. This is a perfect example of what you are likely to find when you are invited into a newly designed ecosystem of one of your customers. There has been an excessive amount of mulch placed on top, which we're going to rake back, and then we're going to dig a plug out and show you how incorporation, now the organic matter has already been acquired, brought here and placed here, but it needs to be incorporated to involve all of the soil microbes so that the fermentation and the humification, which are the active processes that break it down and make it available to the tree in the soil. All right, you can see where the bottom layer is pretty tightly packed clay. There's very little growth in there, and what we find is as we progress up through the horizons, we get our rooting. And what you need to do is incorporate and stir this into this layer more deeply so that this root and these fine fibrous roots that you see here are not located so close to the surface, because when it gets hot and dry and the water is scarce, guess what's going to happen? These roots will die, and as a result the tree will suffer. And so acquisition has been taking place by someone else. Incorporation is what you do, and soil formation is what takes place and gives you this root formation deeper in the soil underneath the tree to give it protection from extreme weather conditions. Very hot, very dry, and will cause the tree stress and in some cases failure.